Sunday, September 6th, 2015, NYJetsNews.com's weekend update. Welcome to NYJetsNews.com's weekend update for September 6th, 2015. Tonight we're going to go through the 53-man roster. Yesterday the final trim down was made. Today some moves have been made to adjust that 53, and 8 have been signed to the practice squad. We're not going to go over every player, but as in but we'll go through the notable ones. Tonight's show has been brought to you by Mountain Dew. It could be. Give me a call. Okay. Starting off with the quarterbacks. Yesterday, both Matt Flynn and Josh Johnson were released. You agree with that, Joe? Joe likes that move. This was basically in response to the two of them were both trying out to back up Fitzpatrick for the first game of the season. Apparently, the Jets front office believed that either Geno Smith would be healthy enough come week one or pretty close to, and that Bryce Petty would be a fine stopgap in the meantime. Bryce has shown some flashes in the preseason and the ability to be a quick learner, but I don't think he's really ready to play an entire game in case if Fitzpatrick goes down. So let's hope that Geno Smith is ready for emergency quarterback week one, but ready to back up Fitzpatrick and challenge him for that starting role back pretty early. Okay. There's a saying, when you're worried about your fourth quarterback, you don't have a first quarterback, if that makes any sense. So, it's not really a big deal either way what happened with those two. Over the running backs, Daryl Richardson and Julian Houseware were both released. Julian did make the practice squad today, but the notable one from there is Tommy Bohannon. Made the team as a fullback. He will play more like an H-back, and on third down situations he could be in there protecting the passer, but he will benefit from Jason Morrow being out, and will be able to sometimes play as a second tight end in two tight end sets along with Cumberland in passing situations. That's where we are with that. Over to the tight ends. They just did release Wes Saxon, who made the practice squad, but the Jets are still a little light and may still look to pick someone up. They do have 2 practice squad spots, but most likely they'll be looking for somebody from the main roster. Mostly because they're just, Cumberland's a decent receiving option, but he hasn't really shown the ability to play an entire season. He gets pretty banged up easily. And Kellen Davis, he's just a stopgap, can run block, but hasn't really shown the ability to play significant time. Jets will be, hurting in that position in the meantime. And we get over to the wide receiver. The Jets kept 5 yesterday, which was pretty interesting. I said at the time that 5 seemed a little light, especially due to the injury of Jeremy Curley and the injury of Devin Smith. It's basically they're going into the game with 3 receivers, and one of them is notable for his blocking ability, Quincy Enunwa. He will play more of an H-back role, second tight end. You see him coming out of the slot and running plays and motioning over and kind of getting up to the line of scrimmage sometimes. But the Jets did address that today. D. Milner was put on the long-term inactive list, injured list. He'll miss half the season, and that opened up a spot for the Jets to pick back up Chris Asua after he was cut yesterday. Also cut with Shaq Evans and Walter Powell. Walter Powell's been the Jets' best kick returner in the preseason, handling all the duties, but he did get picked back up and put on the practice roster today. He still probably will see some game action this year. So over to the line, no one really noticeable to talk about other than the Jets kept 10 players, which seems pretty heavy, but Ode Ibushi is suspended for week 1. So after week 1, we could maybe expect one of those guys to get released or to make way for somebody else. Thank you. No one really noticeable to talk about on the D-line. The Jets are pretty stacked at the position, and anyone who's fighting for roster space is basically for practice or backing up. Now over to the linebacker, got a little interesting yesterday. Joe Mays was released, who a lot of people have been talking about how well he was playing in the preseason, and another one who got cut who seemed pretty surprising was Jason Babin. Jason Babin has been, a terrific pass rusher throughout his career, and the Jets seem to need pass rushing linebackers. The difference is this year the Jets will. I see them using a lot of national card packages, as they would call it when the Giants would do this, but the Jets basically have 4 defensive ends they can line up in nickel situations. If you go from Copels and Williams on the outside, and on the inside you want to have Wilkerson and Richardson when he's back off suspension, and that will kind of eliminate the need for outside linebacker or pass rush specialists. Say that 3 times fast. And then we got Lorenzo Malden, the rookie, who's seems like he's coming along well off injury. The vet Calvin Pace, Quentin Copels. It seemed like the Jets were more concerned at depth at inside linebacker, keeping Aaron Henderson, who's shown he can be a really good player, but he's got a troubled past, and they were more interested in someone like taking a chance on someone like him than developing a player like Joe Mays. Joe Mays also did not make the practice squad so far, which seems a little bit surprising. And then over to cornerback, the Jets kept 7 as of yesterday, which I was saying in my demo reel that we ran yesterday that seemed a little bit heavy at the position. It makes more sense now that D. Milner has been is now on the injured list and eligible to come back midway through the season. That would drop them down to 6, which makes sense, more of a number. And Walls, it ended up being Revis, Cromartie, Scrine, Walls, Williams, and Dexter McDougal, who was injured all last year, who was another player who seemed to have some really good potential upside. The Jets this upcoming year at times could have 4 or 5 corners on the field. Coach Bowles doesn't really lock players into positions. You're not going to see on every nickel situation the Jets needing 2 safeties on the field, for example. You can see a guy like Calvin Pryor, even if he's starting, come off in passing situations for a cornerback. So it should be really interesting with the depth at corner, what Todd Bowles can do with that defense. And then moving over to safeties, the Jets, they had no surprises yesterday. And a lot of people, fans who follow the team really close, were really happy for Rontez Miles making the squad, which made sense after the Antonio Allen injury. Unfortunately, today he was cut. The Jets signed another player off someone else's that was cut with the 53 trim down, and there's a player who seemed very similar to Rontez, which seems a little surprising, but apparently the Jets, despite all they saw out of him and how well he played in the preseason, they just figure he's not their guy. But they do have 2 spots on the practice roster, which he could be added to one of them if he clears waivers. The thing is, I'm in a lot of Facebook groups, and I see his brother talking about, I'm leaving the groups and we're packing up, so I don't know if Rontez already has his eye set on somewhere else, or has communicated with other teams, but it's a possibility come tomorrow he won't be a New York Jet and he'll be on another roster. And then with the special teams, Jets kept Folk and Quigley, which is no surprise, but keep your eye on the recent Giant release of Steve Weatherford. I don't know why the Giants released him. It could have something to do with his off-season car accident and not being up to snuff yet. But if he is, healthy, I could see maybe him pushing Quigley out to take that role, because Weatherford's an experienced vet who does a really good job at the position, and Quigley has struggled at times. Okay, well, thank you very much. This has been NY Jets News weekend update for September 6, 2015. Have an awesome week. Take care.